Net, the Persian queen, who ruled the most powerful empire on earth and was erased from every record. In the year 522 BCE, someone sat on the throne of the largest empire the world had ever seen, an empire stretching from the sands of Egypt to the mountains of India, an empire commanding 20 million souls. And that someone, according to fragments of evidence that survived 2,000 years of deliberate destruction, was a woman, a queen, a ruler whose name was so systematically erased from history that most scholars today will tell you she never existed at all. But the evidence tells a very different story, and the truth was buried for a reason. Welcome back to Historical Secrets. To understand this mystery, we need to go back to the height of the Achaemenid Persian Empire, the single most powerful political entity the ancient world had ever produced. Founded by Cyrus the Great, expanded by his son Cambyses, this was an empire that made Egypt look provincial and made the Greek city-states tremble. At its peak, it controlled 44% of the entire world's population. No empire in human history, not Rome, not the Mongols, not the British, ever matched that percentage. And in September of 522 BCE, that empire was plunged into chaos. Here is what the official history tells you. King Cambyses II died while returning from his conquest of Egypt. A pretender to the throne, a man claiming to be Cambyses' brother Bardia, had seized power. And then a nobleman named Darius led a conspiracy of 7 Persian lords, killed the pretender, and claimed the throne for himself. Darius carved this version of events into the massive rock face at Behistun in 3 languages for all eternity. Case closed. Except it isn't. Because what historians don't tell you is that between the death of Cambyses and the rise of Darius, someone was holding the empire together. Someone was issuing commands, maintaining the vast bureaucratic machinery, and keeping 20 satrapies from descending into civil war. And the fragments that survived the purge point to one extraordinary figure. Her name, as best as scholars can reconstruct it from damaged Elamite tablets found at Persepolis, was Pantea. Some sources call her Pantea Arteshbad. She was, according to these fragments, not merely a queen consort. She was a military commander. She was an administrator. And during the critical months of 522 BCE, she appears to have been the actual functioning ruler of the Persian Empire. For centuries, this was hidden from the world. And the reason is as old as power itself. When Darius took the throne, he didn't just kill a rival. He rewrote history. The Behistun inscription, that towering monument of propaganda carved into a cliff 300 feet above the ground, was Darius's version of events and only his version. Every other record was systematically hunted down and destroyed. Treasury tablets were smashed. Administrative records were burned. And any mention of a woman ruling, even temporarily, even as a regent, was treated as something more dangerous than rebellion. It was treated as an impossibility that had to be unmade. But you cannot destroy everything. And this is where it gets fascinating. In 1933, archaeologists at Persepolis began uncovering thousands of clay tablets buried beneath the ruins. These were the administrative records of the Persian Empire, mundane documents about food rations, worker payments, and travel authorizations. Most of them dated from the reign of Darius and his successors, but some of them were older. And a small number of those older tablets contained references that didn't match the official history at all. They referenced authorizations issued by a woman of royal standing during precisely the period that Darius claimed the empire was in the hands of a false king. The tablets didn't use the title queen. They used language that scholars have translated as something closer to commander, or the one who holds authority. And they bore a seal that was neither Cambyses nor the supposed pretender Bardia's. Now here is where the mystery deepens. The Greek historians, writing a century or more after these events, preserved echoes of this lost figure. Polyaenus, writing in the 2nd century CE, described a Persian woman named Pantea, who commanded armies and whose tactical brilliance was legendary. He placed her in the time of Cyrus the Great, but many scholars now believe his chronology was confused, because the details he describes, the administrative reforms, the military reorganizations, align far more closely with the chaotic transition period of 522 BCE. Xenophon, too, in his somewhat fictionalized account of Persian history, describes a woman of extraordinary power at the Persian court who was deliberately written out of the royal chronicles. He doesn't name her directly, but he knew she existed. The evidence is scattered and incomplete, and that is precisely the point. When someone is erased from history by the most powerful empire on earth, you don't find a complete biography. You find shadows. You find the negative space where a person used to be. And the negative space around this woman is enormous. Consider this. Darius, in his famous inscription, goes to extraordinary lengths to legitimize his claim to the throne. He lists his genealogy. He invokes the god Ahura Mazda. He describes in exhaustive detail the rebels he defeated. He accounts for every month of the crisis, and yet there is a gap. Between the death of Cambyses and Darius's own seizure of power, there are weeks that the inscription simply skips over. Weeks during which the largest empire on earth was supposedly leaderless. Weeks during which, somehow, the treasury kept functioning, the armies stayed fed, and the provinces remained loyal. Someone was in charge, and Darius didn't want you to know who. This changes everything we thought we knew about the ancient Persian world. We have long understood that Persian women of the royal household held more power than their Greek contemporaries. The Persepolis tablets already proved that royal women owned property, managed estates, commanded workers, and traveled independently with their own entourages. But if the fragments are correct, if Pantea truly held supreme authority even for a few months, then we are not talking about influence behind the scenes. We are talking about a woman who openly ruled the most powerful empire in human history and was then so thoroughly erased that it took 2,500 years and the accidental survival of clay tablets buried in rubble for even a trace of her to resurface. And perhaps the most haunting question is this: if one woman was erased this completely, how many others were too? How many rulers, commanders, and leaders has history simply swallowed because the men who came after them decided that their stories were too dangerous to survive? We will never know the full answer to that question. The fires that Darius lit consumed too much, but the fact that anything survived at all is itself a kind of miracle. Clay doesn't burn the way papyrus does. Stone endures when memory fails. And sometimes, just sometimes, the truth outlasts the lie. Pantea Arteshbad may never trend on social media. Her name may never appear in mainstream textbooks. But she sat where Cyrus sat. She commanded what Cyrus commanded. And for a brief, shining, terrifying moment in 522 BCE, she held the fate of the known world in her hands. The men who came after her spent decades trying to make sure you would never know that. They almost succeeded. Almost. Now, if this story left you questioning what else has been hidden from the official record, you are asking exactly the right question. Because in our next video, we are going to uncover a secret about the Library of Alexandria that has never been told on this channel before. A secret about what was really lost in those flames and who set them and why. You do not want to miss that one. Subscribe now, ring that bell, and we will see you in the next mystery.